our reading strategies. Hi everyone, I'm Valentina Gonzalez. Let's talk about choral reading and echo reading. So what is echo reading? Let's talk about echo reading first, because echo reading is a practice we can use especially with our newly arrived multilingual learners, our students who are at earlier levels or more beginner levels of proficiency in English. This is when the teacher reads a line or a part of a sentence or paragraph aloud, and then the students repeat it back. The goal is that students are repeating it back with a similar expression and pacing and phrasing. The beauty of echo reading is that our multilingual learners are hearing the sounds and they're watching as the teacher tracks the words that students are reading. Choral reading is similar to echo reading. The difference is that instead of the teacher reading a line aloud and then students repeating, with choral reading, we're all reading the text together. We're all reading it at the same time. And the goal is that we're reading in unison so that we sound like one voice together. Both of these techniques, choral and echo reading, help students to not only understand what we're reading, but also help to build their fluency and their confidence as readers. Studies have shown differences between students with good fluency and students with poor fluency. And many of the studies have indicated that students who read with more rapid identification of words are able to give more attention to the message and understand the message better. Students who lacked that rapid identification and had to devote more of their energy on sounding out words, decoding them, lacked the ability to understand what they were reading, lacked the ability to comprehend the text. They required more time to process the words. Choral and echo reading are two reading strategies that can help us to increase fluency and vocabulary for students and help build confidence in readers. Automaticity and accuracy in reading let the reader focus their energy on what the meaning of the text is, rather than just decoding the individual words. So when our students are really focused on individual decoding, their energy is spent on all of that, sound and the letters and sounds, and that can be really taxing. Instead, when they have automaticity and accuracy, then that decoding is effortless. It's very natural and fluent. They have more energy, they have more brain power, that their cognitive resources are available to understand what they're reading. And all of this leads to improved reading comprehension. That's what we want. That's our goal. Oftentimes when we think about shared reading, we equate it to reading experiences for kids in lower grade levels, primary grades, but choral and echo reading are excellent practices even for students in secondary classrooms. Students listening comprehension often supersedes their reading comprehension for many, many years. Even up until they're in secondary classrooms, many of our kids, especially our multilingual learners, have listening comprehension that is greater than their own reading comprehension. So practicing choral and echo reading together as a class helps them to hear what they're reading and understand it better. As teachers, when we employ choral and echo reading, we really want to be intentional about our pacing, our rate, and tracking the words as we read together and as we echo read with students. Using echo and choral reading to support prosody, rate, accuracy, and comprehension can be fun for kids and also really practical for us as educators. Prosody refers to the rhythm and tone. And when we practice this with kids in our classrooms through echo and choral reading, they get to hear us as models. Prosody and tone include elements like the intonation and the way we stress and phrase when we're reading, the expression, and all of that helps with meaning as well. For our multilingual learners, this is really important work, and it's important that they practice it with us as expert models for reading. Reading rate refers to the speed at which we read. We often measure it in words per minute, and what we want to do is model that appropriate reading rate, not too fast, not too slow, because reading rate affects reading comprehension. All of this affects reading comprehension. Accuracy with reading is the ability to read words correctly without mistakes, and it involves recognizing and decoding the words accurately. So when we do choral and echo reading, this is a really good time to focus and highlight elements, foundational skills that some of our students may be lacking. And finally, that reading comprehension is just the ability to understand. I say just, but it's like so important, because without understanding what we're reading, then there's really no purpose for reading at all. Comprehension involves more than decoding. It also involves understanding relationships and the overall meaning of the text. It's important that we use choral reading and echo reading in our classrooms, even in science and social studies and math classrooms, because we are helping kids to read that academic vocabulary and fostering a sense of community and building students' confidence as they're reading in a new language and learning new concepts in a new language. Choral reading and echo reading help to improve those sight words and help students to engage together as a class. Choral and echo reading are not like popcorn reading. This is not where we're going to call on a few kids to read a paragraph or a sentence on the spot. Instead, choral and echo reading lower the affective filter, making students feel safe to read. And if students are not reading with the class, if they are listening, they're still participating. So don't be afraid, don't be alarmed if you have kids that seem like they're sitting back and not engaging yet. They may be engaging just in a different way. They may be participating by listening and watching the rest of the class. Remember, the affective filter is that imaginary wall that rises in students' brains when they feel nervous or embarrassed or afraid. And what we want to do is lower that affective filter, making students feel safe and welcome. And the echo and choral reading that we can engage students in helps to create that low stress environment where students can engage and not feel on the spot as readers in the classroom. If you're looking for a text to choose to use as a choral or echo reading, select something that's not too big. Select just a small chunk, a small passage, an important piece that you also want to engage students in conversation about. Enlarge it so all students can see it. Place it on the smartboard or under a document camera, or have the text available for every student to hold in their hands. Echo reading and choral reading should not be the only way kids read in the class. This is just one of the ways we engage readers. It's a scaffold towards independent reading. As they read on their own, now they have that experience that we read together. They can lean on those experiences where they heard us pronounce together, they engaged with the class, and now when I ask students to read on their own, I can have my newly arrived students, my students at beginner levels of proficiency, read that text we read as a class. They will be able to read that text because we've already read it together. We've already shared it and discussed it. And now they're going to feel confident to be able to read on their own. One of the most beautiful things about choral and echo reading is that there's not a lot of prep work. We don't have to prepare a lot to have students read with us or follow along as we read and then they echo after. Yet these two strategies are extremely powerful and useful for our students.